In the twilight of the 5th century BCE, Greece stood broken and divided. The Peloponnesian War had ravaged the land for nearly 3 decades, leaving Athens humbled and Sparta exhausted despite its victory. The treasuries of once great city-states lay empty, farms abandoned, and thousands of battle-hardened hoplites found themselves without purpose or pay. It was in this atmosphere of desperation that the agents of Cyrus the Younger, brother of the Persian king Artaxerxes II, moved through the agoras and gymnasiums of Greece. They carried with them promises of Persian gold, 1 darak per month for each soldier, a small fortune compared to what men could earn at home. For commanders, there would be even greater rewards. By the spring of 401 BCE, over 10,000 Greek mercenaries had answered the call. They gathered at Sardis in Lydia, ready to march east under the banner of a Persian prince, unaware that they were about to embark on one of the most extraordinary military adventures in history. The army that assembled at Sardis was a cross-section of Greek military might. Clearchus, a grizzled Spartan exile, commanded the largest contingent of about 10,000 Greek soldiers called the hoplites, peltasts, archers, and light shock troops. Among those who joined without official position was Xenophon, an Athenian aristocrat and student of Socrates. His account, the Anabasis, would become the primary source for what followed. The first test of the combined Greek-Persian force came in the mountains of Pisidia, where local tribes had long resisted Persian rule. Though Cyrus had claimed these tribes were the expedition's true target, the engagement served primarily as a trial by fire for the newly formed army. The Pisidian tribesmen employed guerrilla tactics, using the rugged terrain to ambush the column. As the Greeks marched through a narrow valley, the Pisidians attacked from the heights, raining down arrows and rolling boulders upon the marching formation. Clearchus responded with tactical brilliance. He deployed his Spartans in a defensive formation to secure the main path, while sending Rhodian slingers and Cretan archers to the high ground. The light troops outranged the Pisidian archers, while the hoplites provided an impenetrable barrier against direct assaults. The battle raged for most of a day, with the Greeks systematically driving the tribesmen from one position to another. By nightfall, more than 200 Pisidians lay dead, while the Greeks had lost only 17 men. The victory demonstrated the effectiveness of combined arms tactics and built confidence among the diverse Greek contingents. It wasn't long before the army approached the Cilician Gates, a narrow pass through the Taurus Mountains. They faced their first major strategic challenge. The pass was so constricted that even a small defending force could hold off a much larger army. Anabasis, the ruler of Cilicia and a Persian vassal, had positioned troops at the summit of the pass. The defenders had constructed stone breastworks and prepared to roll boulders down on any advancing force. Cyrus ordered Menon to lead his Thessalians in a daring night march over the mountains via a little-known goat path. The march was treacherous, with men slipping on narrow ledges and falling to their deaths in the darkness. By dawn, however, Menon's troops had positioned themselves on the heights behind the Cilician defenders. Seeing Greek troops appearing on the ridge behind them, the Cilicians abandoned their positions without a fight. The pass was secured without a single Greek casualty, a testament to the value of intelligence and maneuver. After passing through Syria, the army reached the Euphrates River at Thapsacus. Crossing this major waterway presented both tactical and logistical challenges. Intelligence reports indicated that a Persian force under Abracomas was prepared to contest the crossing. The river was nearly half a mile wide at the crossing point, though, fortunately, at a seasonal low. Cyrus ordered the construction of rafts using stuffed animal hides, a technique the Greeks had not previously employed. Clearchus positioned archers and slingers to provide covering fire from the bank, while Menon's troops formed a defensive perimeter on the eastern bank, expecting immediate attack. The crossing itself became a race against time. The first wave of 2,000 hoplites crossed successfully, establishing a beachhead. The second wave included cavalry and light troops to extend the perimeter. For 3 days, the army labored to move all troops, supplies, and camp followers across the river. Abracomas's forces never materialized. He had withdrawn upon learning of the size of Cyrus's army. but the crossing nonetheless demonstrated the Greeks' growing proficiency in expedition warfare. By early September 401 BCE, after marching nearly 1,500 miles from the Mediterranean coast, the army of Cyrus finally approached Babylon. Intelligence from deserters confirmed that King Artaxerxes II was marching to meet them with the royal army. On the morning of September 3rd, a dust cloud on the horizon signaled the approach of the king's forces. Cyrus ordered his army to prepare for battle, with the Greek contingent forming the right wing beside the Euphrates River. Clearchus commanded the Greeks, with Proxenus holding the center and men on the left of the Greek line. Cyrus himself took position in the center of the overall formation with his Persian cavalry and 600 bodyguards. The royal army was a truly massive force, estimated at 40,000 cavalry and 100,000 infantry. At its center rode Artaxerxes II, surrounded by 6,000 elite cavalry known as the apple bearers, for the golden apple pommels on their spear butts. The battlefield was a vast plain near the village of Cunaxa, about 50 miles from Babylon. The terrain favored the Persian cavalry, with no natural obstacles to impede mounted charges. Recognizing this disadvantage, Clearchus initially positioned the Greek hoplites with their right flank secured by the Euphrates River. This prevented the Persian cavalry from outflanking them. The Greek formation was arranged in a traditional phalanx, 8 shields deep, with Spartan hoplites forming the front ranks. As the armies faced each other across the plain, Cyrus rode along the Greek line with his interpreter Philonous. According to Xenophon, he called out, "Men of Greece, I do not bring you as mercenaries because I lack men, but because I believe you are better and braver than many barbarians. Show yourselves worthy of the freedom you possess." The Greeks responded by beating their shields with their spears and shouting their battle cry, "Elu, Elu." This was adopted to imitate their patron goddess, Athena's sacred bird, the owl. Around mid-afternoon, when the armies were about 600 yards apart, Cyrus gave the signal to advance. The Greeks began their approach at a walk, maintaining their formation. At about 200 yards, Clearchus ordered the advance to a double-time march. As they closed to within 100 yards of the Persian left wing, the Greek front ranks spontaneously broke into a full charge, shouting their battle cry. The Persian troops directly opposite them, Artaxerxes' Egyptian mercenaries, held their ground momentarily before breaking under the impact of the Greek phalanx. The collision was violent but brief. The Egyptian mercenaries, though brave, were not equipped or trained to withstand the disciplined shock of the Greek phalanx. Their front ranks were crushed under the weight of Greek shields and spears, and the remainder fled within minutes of contact. Clearchus, maintaining discipline, prevented his men from pursuing too far. Instead, he wheeled his formation to the left, intending to roll up the Persian line from the flank and strike at the king's position. While the Greeks were routing the Persian left wing, Cyrus observed his brother Artaxerxes in the center of the Persian formation. In a moment of reckless courage, or perhaps blinded by hatred, Cyrus abandoned all strategy and charged directly at the king with only his 600 bodyguards. The charge initially succeeded in breaking through the lines of common troops. Cyrus and his men cut their way through to the king's position, killing the commander of the royal guard. In the confusion, Cyrus himself managed to wound Artaxerxes with a javelin throw that pierced his breastplate. For a moment, it seemed the entire war might be decided by this single combat between brothers, but the king's superior numbers soon told. Surrounded by the elite apple bearers, Cyrus's small force was overwhelmed. A javelin struck Cyrus below the eye, and he fell from his horse, mortally wounded. With their leader dead, the Persian troops loyal to Cyrus began to waver and then flee. The entire center and left of Cyrus's army collapsed, leaving only the Greeks on the right flank still holding formation. Unaware of Cyrus's death, the Greeks continued their advance, driving all before them. So complete was their victory on their section of the battlefield that they returned to their camp, believing the battle won. Only as the sun began to set did they learn the truth. Cyrus was dead, his Persian troops scattered, and they were now alone in the heart of enemy territory, surrounded by a hostile army tens of thousands strong. Artaxerxes' forces, regrouping after the initial shock, began to encircle the Greek position. Clearchus quickly organized a defensive formation, with hoplites forming a hollow square around their camp and baggage. As darkness fell, Persian cavalry probed the Greek lines, but were driven back by archers and slingers. The night passed in tense vigilance, with the Greeks preparing for what seemed certain to be a fight to the death the following day. To their surprise, dawn brought not an attack, but a parley. Tissaphernes, a Persian satrap who had remained loyal to Artaxerxes, approached with an offer. If the Greeks would lay down their arms, they would be allowed safe passage back to Ionia. Clearchus's response was defiant. Men who are victorious in battle do not surrender their arms. We will keep our weapons, and with them we will be valuable friends or formidable enemies. The Greek commanders agreed to a truce but refused to disarm. They would need to find their own way home through thousands of miles of hostile territory. For several days, the Greeks marched north alongside Persian forces led by Tissaphernes. The satrap maintained a pretense of friendship, even hosting a dinner for the Greek commanders to negotiate terms for their withdrawal. 20 days after the battle, Tissaphernes invited the Greek generals to a conference, supposedly to resolve tensions that had arisen during the march. Against the advice of many, including Xenophon, 5 generals, Clearchus, Proxenus, Menon, Augeas, and Socrates, attended the meeting, accompanied by 20 captains and some 200 soldiers. Once inside the Persian camp, the generals were seized. The captains and soldiers who had accompanied them were cut down where they stood. The generals were taken in chains to Artaxerxes at Babylon, where all except Menon were beheaded. Menon, who had allegedly been in secret communication with Tissaphernes, was kept alive for a year of torture before execution. That night, the Greek army faced its darkest hour. Without their commanders, surrounded by enemies, and more than 1,500 miles from friendly territory, their situation seemed hopeless. Many expected to be attacked at dawn and slaughtered. Xenophon, who had been present in the expedition as an observer rather than a soldier, could not sleep. As he later wrote, he had a dream in which a thunderbolt struck his father's house, illuminating it.